It was like 6 months before I went to trial. Now I'm like, could I accept death? Because this is a life and death situation. You either get a life sentence or it's death penalty for you. Because what if they find me guilty of the death penalty? How could I tell two boys, 4 and 5 years old, that you ain't about to see your dad anymore because he's about to get executed? It's hard to explain to kids. So I'm like, man, I got to really sit here and fathom, can I accept death? Because these people could kill.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that really gave me a lot of relief was when a judge asked me, she was like, why shouldn't I seek the death penalty? And the only thing I can come up with, like, how could you kill an innocent man? She looked at me, she said, you know what? You saved your own life today. We're not going to kill you, but we're going to give you a life sentence. Before a trial even started, so they told me right off the top, I already know I'm going to be found guilty, but I escaped the death penalty.
The story that my next guest has to share is one of the most important ones we've had to date. I will say this guest is all class. If something similar had happened to me that happened to him, I can't imagine how I would be emotionally stable and willing to talk to anybody about it in such a calm way and be so responsible about the approach in which I tackle these other cases to make things better. He is definitely making the world a better place, despite the disposition that he was put in from a systemic issue that law enforcement and our society has had for many decades. I strongly suggest that you pass this to as many friends and relatives as you possibly can, not for my sake and not for his sake, but for the sake of people that have no earthly idea that this still goes on, because it is still a modern day issue. Moreover, pass it on for the sake of those who could glean some hope that need our help in order to fix their situation that they're in due to the same circumstances. I'll also link a documentary in the information below so that you can take that and pass that also. I encourage you strongly to watch that and get a little bit more perspective about this. It's an extraordinary story. And so without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Christopher Scott.
I guess the first place I'd like to start, without being too boring, but again, I really want to get the context of your life and how you ended up in the predicament that you did, and kind of show how atypical of a situation that was for a person like you. So you grew up in South Dallas?
I grew up in Oak Cliff.
In Oak Cliff?
Yes.
So your whole life?
Whole life, yes.
And then as you started getting older, you started picking up jobs and doing whatever kids do that are responsible, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I left home at the age of 17 because it was the best way that I felt like that I was going to be able to really get what I needed to have. About experience the world, experience life, and just being out there on my own and trying to become a better person. Because what I saw in my community, it wasn't something that I wanted to be a part of.
What was that specifically?
You saw, a lot of drugs. You saw a lot of drug addicts starting becoming everywhere. You start witnessing drug raids and drug homes. And if you wanted to have raise a family, this is not the environment you would want to raise a family in. So I took it up on myself. At 17, I was already contemplating about moving, because some of my older siblings had already ventured out and moved to North Dallas.
Okay.
And they was like, this is better living and it's better quality out here. So many more other things to do. So I was like, okay, cool. This is what I would do when I get an opportunity to get a job so I can move out this way. And soon I was able to find that job that I needed, that I felt like I can afford to live in North Dallas, because the living expenses is totally different from living in Oak Cliff to North Dallas.
Sure.
So it's a different atmosphere. So once I figured that I had the right job, that I can be able to afford the living out here and enjoy life out here. So that's what I did at the age of 18. I was able to find a job at a local grocery store where my brother helped get me the job at, because he had been working at this job since he was a freshman in high school. It was Tom Thumb grocery store.
Okay.
And he became a grocery manager at that store. So as he was coming up, he was like, hey, if you want to just, have a good job, pays every week, decent money, I get your job where the store I'm working at and see what you can do about that. And that's exactly what he did. So I was able to get that job, get me a nice apartment, car.
And this is just you by yourself?
Yeah, this is me by myself. But at this particular time, I'm already having kids.
Okay.
So now I'm 18 going on 19 with 2 babies now.
Yeah. That's 18 going on 50.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, what have I got myself into? So I was thinking, like, I have 2 kids now.
Yeah.
I can't be out here bullcorning around or whatever. I have kids that I have to provide for. I have people I have to provide for. So I just started working hard every day, being, that kind of dad that you wanted to be. You wanted your kids to be able to live in a good environment, go to a decent school, don't have to worry about where their next meal coming from, or when they wake up in the morning, would it be lights on or things of that nature. So I just wanted to have a good living for my kids, and I was providing that for them at a young age. And I learned what responsibility was at a young age as well, because having, it's nine of us. We had a huge family, so we had to understand how we have to share and survive on just a little bit.
Yep. That's
so,
yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. So that what gave me all the, responsibility in the world. Like, I know how much I can eat. I know how much I can't eat. Mm-hmm. I know how far I can go, and I know how far I can't go.
Got a great life lesson. Yeah.
Yeah.
At an early age.
Much.
So you established yourself. You had, I guess, a girlfriend at the time, the kids and 2 kids.
Yeah. 2 boys.
And this is when you're working at a grocery store. So you're doing it like, we're all trying to get our kids to do
right.
Take that path, it's certainly the right path.
Right.
So give me a little backstory on how you ended up getting into this trouble, quote unquote, you getting into this trouble.
So now I've been at the job for about 4.5 years now, working good, kids staying with me, but my kid's mom, I'm not with her anymore. Mm-hmm. I had another girlfriend named Brandy, and we was living together as a family. At this time, I'm about 26 years of age, and with a good life, like raising my kids, making sure they go to school, enjoying life. Once they get out of school, we, play games together. We go feed the ducks at the pond, where the apartments I lived at had a pond with ducks in it.
Oh, cool.
So every day they used to go feed the ducks, take them out, let them ride their bikes. And then once they come in, they know it's like schoolwork, whatever you had to do, time to eat, play games, take a bath. Now it's time to go to bed. The everyday life of being a father, you know what I mean? And being a taxpayer.
Yeah.
So this particular night, I'm at home. It's a Sunday, because I never go anywhere on the Sundays, because for one, Dallas Cowboys play. I don't go nowhere without them before I see them play. And Sunday was like family day. We watch the cards, we watch the clothes, we just do a lot of things with the kids. It's a family day.
Right.
And that evening, once we watched the game, Cowboys had won, which was good. We're at home watching a movie, Sunday movie, before the kids go to bed. So after we watched the Sunday movie, put the kids to bed. Now, me and my girlfriend, we used to open up the patio door, cut music on, and just sit back and chill, light a candle. So that's what we're doing. And so happened a friend of hers that I was introduced through her, because the guy that I went to prison with, name is Clark Simmons.
Okay.
And this is the guy that caught me that night. and Clark was struggling with drugs. He had a drug problem.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at the local grocery store in that community. And me and Clark became friends because my girlfriend, family, and his family all grew up together. And it's kind of, middle class neighborhood in North Dallas off of Preston and Lovers Lane.
Okay.
And he called me this night. It's like this particular night he was struggling real bad. So I was like, okay, like I really did. I knew him, but I didn't know him. But every time he used to come into the grocery store, he used to tell me about the addiction. And I was like, hey, I had older brothers and cousins that had the same kind of addiction. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I told them as a young kid. Like you need to change, choose better company who you keep.
Mm-hmm.
And stop being around people that's going to influence you to use drugs.
Right.
And then not only that, you got to want to stop yourself. Can't nobody really make you do it. It's something that you do because you want to do it.
Right.
But having influence around you, it helps you want to do drugs because they're enticing you to use drugs.
And it seemed like he had an inkling to want to stop, or else he wouldn't be pouring his heart out to you, who was just an acquaintance, right?
Yeah. So
interesting.
That particular night, I turned him down like 5 times because I don't leave my kids or girlfriend at home alone at night by themselves. So eventually, like the 6th call, I'm like, okay, I'm coming to see what you're talking about because I didn't want him to go out and hurt himself or hurt somebody. And the last person he reached out to for help was me.
Right.
I didn't want that on my conscience. So I got up, told my girlfriend what I was going to do. She was like, call me when you get there, let me know you're okay. So on my way, I'm driving. I stopped by a local gas station, put gas in my car. And the travel I have to make, the commute, is about a 35, 40-minute drive. So when I'm getting ready to exit off of Mockingbird, it's the community, it's right off of Mockingbird.
Mm-hmm.
And I turn down his street, I see a lot of cops. Now, I've never seen these many cops one time in this neighborhood. And I'm wondering, like, man, what's going on?
Something's happening.
Something is happening. Like, and being African-American, growing up in the neighborhood I grew up in, when we see cops like that and they get behind us, the first thing we think about is pulling into a friend's yard and stopping and getting out. So because we don't want this cop to just bother us this particular time because maybe we're just not in the mood to be bothered at that particular time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my deal when I'm going to pick him up. I'm like, all these cops. So I just drive up in his driveway. I don't get out. I blow my horn. He comes out, get in the car because he understands.
Yeah.
And what we do, we make a couple of blocks around the corner. I stop him at a friend's house. He maybe stayed in there maybe 2 minutes tops. He comes back out, get in the car. We drive to 7-Eleven. We get out, we get a couple of soft drinks. We sit in the car, we talk a few minutes. And then I'm like, hey, I'm finna take you home. You okay? He said, yeah, I'm okay.
So you just need kind of somebody to talk to?
Yeah, he wanted to vent. You know what I mean? He wanted to vent, tell me that the struggle is real, that he needed somebody to talk to. And me being young, like I said, I only told him the things that I told my older brothers and cousins when they had the same kind of problem. So now we're on our way back to his home. Now I see more cops, but they're not bothering me. You got cops standing out. You have cops driving around the neighborhood.
Are they like centralized at one house nearby or where?
No, they just have like this
all in the street.
Streets.
Okay.
They want to I guess, cut the streets off to a certain radius so people can't really come in or go out.
Like a little perimeter set.
Yeah, like a little perimeter set.
Okay.
So as I'm driving down his street, helicopter flies over my car, put the light on my car. I'm like, what's that about? So I don't really pay it too much attention. And when I really paid attention, when I seen the police make a U-turn. And once the car made a U-turn, they turned around to get behind us. So I panic, but I don't panic because I'm wondering, like, why is all of this going? What's going on?
Right, you're curious.
I'm curious.
You don't want to get into it.
Exactly. So I'm like, what I'm gonna do is we're gonna stop. I'm gonna go inside the house. I'm gonna sit down for a minute until all the cops go. Then I get in my car and leave. But the first thing I did was I sit on the couch. And now I'm thinking like, man, what's going on? So I take my coat off. Now I'm watching TV. I'm not really concerned about what's going on outside now because I feel like I'm safe. I'm inside the home.
You're going to wait it out.
Wait it out. So next thing you know, the cops call the telephone. Hey, the two men that just got out of the car, we want them to come outside. So I tell my friend Claude, I'm like, they want us to come outside. He's like, for what? I'm like, I don't know. He say, hang the phone up. I hang it up. So maybe 20 seconds later, they call back. I answer the phone. They say the same thing. The two guys that just came in the house, we want y'all to come outside. We want to talk to y'all. I tell them the same thing, like, man, hang the phone up. Don't worry about it. Your house, your rules. I hang the phone up. I continue to watch TV. I'm not worrying about it. And so some told me to stand up and look out the window. When I stood up and looked out the window, the whole street was barricaded. Like you couldn't move an inch without somebody seeing you leave. So now I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Then I started seeing flashlights of cops shining through the windows, walking around the house. I immediately got on the phone. I called my girlfriend. I said, look, I don't know what's going on, but maybe you need to come over here. And she like, what's going on? I said, it's just cops everywhere. Just come over here. Let's see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, okay, cool, I'm on my way. So eventually we tell the cops like, look, you know, it's kids in the house, it's ladies in the house, they getting scared. I'm like, nah, this not good. Tell the cops we're going to come outside. So I don't want them to, when we come out, have this eagerness to rush us or whatever.
Like a big confrontation, yeah.
So I said, I'm going to sit on the couch. And we allowed the cops to come in and like bum rush the house. And now that I'm looking up at like maybe 9 guns pointed at me.
Wow.
And I'm like, what is this about? Like, why y'all have so many guns on me? And why do y'all have guns drawn on me anyway?
Yeah.
And the cops say, well, you on a need to know basis. You come outside, we'll tell you what you need to know. Say, okay, cool. I'm gonna follow whatever instruction you give me. It tell maybe 5 of us to lay on the ground. Lay on the ground for what?
5 of you, are these other people in that house?
Inside the house that fit the description. So the description was this: 2 African-American men, 1 tall, 1 short, dark complected, with low haircuts. So I'm like, you describing majority of the NBA, the National Football League. You describing
90% of the neighborhood.
Yeah, 90% of my neighbors. So what are you talking about? What kind of description is that? So then they went and picked random people that was just civilians looking at the scene that matched that description, pulled them and laid them on side of us.
They were just spectating.
Just spectators.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, they choose me out of everybody. Hey, you come here. I'm like, okay, what's going on? But they're not telling me what I'm being questioned about. So the officer tells me to hold out my hands, and they put some liquid substance in my hand, and they let it drop into a bag. They seal it, put it in the van, and then he kind of made a joke. He said, you know who this is? You're talking about the detective. I'm like, no. Who is that? He said, that's Columbo. I'm like, Columbo? He said, yeah, have you ever seen the show Columbo?
Yeah.
This is what he tell me. I say, yeah, I'm born in the 70s. Yeah, I grew up on it. He said, well, he's like Columbo. He gets his man every time. I'm like, what you talking about? What you mean get his man every time? You will be found guilty if he's on this case. I'm like, guilty of what?
You still have no earthly idea.
I don't know what you're talking about. So they escort me to a van, to a police car, handcuff me and say, well, it's a lady that's going to come identify you. If she can't identify you, we have to let you go. So I said, okay.
What do you mind me asking? What year is this?
This is 96.
Okay.
And 97.
Right. Okay.
And I'm like, okay, fine, because I know on Sundays I don't leave the house. So I know whoever she's looking for is not going to be me.
Right. You only been out for 15 minutes driving around.
So I'm waiting on her to come. My girlfriend pulls up. So when she pulls up, they say, that's the lady, grab her. I'm like, grab who? Her. I say, that's my girlfriend. He said, so what? She's involved in this, what's going on? I'm like, what are you talking about?
Oh my gosh.
So what had happened, it was 4 guys and 1 female. The female went into the drug house to scope out to see how much drug and how much money was in the house. She comes out, tell the guys in the car what she saw. 2 men go in, rob, and kill the drug dealer. But while fires were shot, the Hispanic drug dealer recognized one of the guys of being a guy that goes around robbing people. He immediately pulls out his gun. They shoot simultaneously. The Hispanic guy missed. D-Mite, shoots the Hispanic guy up under the shoulder blade. He died instantly. So that's how that narrative is. So that's why they said, that's the girl, grab her.
Because they thought she was the one scoping the place, setting it up, basically, yeah.
I'm like, that's my girlfriend. She been at home with me all day. What are you talking about? He like, yeah, that's what you say. So they asked my girlfriend to search both our cars. We allowed them to search the cars. And then they went in the house and searched the house because the clothes that was described that that the assailants had on didn't match me and my co-defendant clothes. So they thinking we done went in the house and changed clothes.
Yeah, see if you swapped it all out.
So they looked for about an hour. They couldn't find it. So they like, we can't find the clothes. And I'm like, what clothes you talking about? Like, these are the same clothes I had on I got out the car.
Yeah.
So now they saying, well, the woman is not going to come identify you here. We're going to take you to the Capers building, Crimes Against Persons downtown, where she would see if you're the person.
Yeah.
So this is when the plot thickens for me. They put me in front of a big glass window, but they took about 18 of us to jail that night. Paddy wagon, everybody that was on the ground, some of the spectators went to jail that night. And what they did, they put all of us in one room. But the other 18 people, they put them on side of the room where they couldn't be seen. They immediately handcuffed me to a bench. And the cop walks the lady up to the glass window. It was thick plexiglass, so I couldn't hear him, but I read her lips. And the cop pointed at me and said, this is the man that killed your husband. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the man. And the lady said, see, that's him. So now I'm playing in my mind. I'm like, now I know I'm a good lip reader. Now, is that what she really said? So it blows over my head. So immediately, I didn't even think about it anymore.
And you're the only one on the other side of the glass that's actually and I'm like, shackled to a bench.
Who you think she's going to choose?
Yeah.
So they end up taking me to interrogation. I'm in interrogation for about 3 hours. They ask me about drugs. Like, who you get your drugs from? I'm not a drug seller. Yeah, you are. Tell me how much you buy this amount of drugs for. I'm like, I'm not a drug seller. What are you talking about? Say, yeah, they tell us you the kingpin drug dealer of the neighborhood. I'm like, dude, what kingpin drug dealer work at a grocery store?
I'm in North Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't understand what are you talking about. And then I've watched enough cop shows in my day. Whatever interrogation room you in, if you look up, that's what you've been interrogated for. So I told them, let me use the restroom. They said, yeah, you can, but you can't go anywhere. I'm not trying to go anywhere. So when I walk up and I look up, I see homicide. When I get to the restroom, everything started, okay, they took the stuff off me and see if I fired a gun. I'm like, I'm not worrying about that because I know I hadn't fired a gun.
Right.
So that's going to help put me in the clip.
That was the test they did with the bag. And like a GSR test or something.
Now when I come back, I'm like, so what are y'all saying I did? They said, right now, we tired of your BS. You going to jail for capital murder. I'm like, wait a minute. You was questioning me about drugs. But all of a sudden, it turns to be, I'm being I'm being arrested for capital murder. Are you kidding me? He said, yeah. That lady said you killed her husband. That's all we need is her word against yours, and we believe her, and you going to jail for capital murder. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding. They're like, no, we're not. So we're walking out the interrogation room. A cop stops us. He said, I need to speak to Mr. Scott for a second. And they
Is
said,
this
okay.
like a patrolman or a detective?
Yeah, this is one of the cops that was at the scene.
Okay.
He said, well, Mr. Scott, you know what? I'm like, what? I don't believe you committed this crime. And I'm like, I know I didn't commit this crime, but they saying I'm going to jail for capital murder. He said, yeah, you're going to jail for capital murder. He said, but these are the reasons I don't think you committed this crime. He said, for one, the lady saw you 10 minutes prior to us putting you in a photographic lineup, and she couldn't identify you. And he said, when I asked her why she couldn't identify you, she said she was scared. And I said, scared of what? She said, scared of him. I said, scared of Mr. Scott? She said, yeah. He said, how could you be scared of him? And he's handcuffed, locked up, surrounded by officers, and you're surrounded by officers now. He can't harm you. Why are you scared that you can't identify him? He said, that's one reason. He said, for two, he said, look, you're well dressed, you're well groomed, you're well spoken, you're driving a nice car. We found an uncashed paycheck stub in your pocket that accumulates more than what was taken. He's saying, so this is not the type of crime that fits you. This is a type of crime that fits a dope fiend.
Right.
This is exact words. He says, the only thing I can tell you to do is, when you go to court, subpoena me. I testify to say that it's nothing linking you to this crime, but her word. That's all we have because we had no physical evidence. Interesting. Found it very interesting
he's
for
already
a cop to say this.
Well, he's seen it go sideways, and you've seen there's good ones and bad ones, and if you don't have control of the situation, you can do whatever you can. But did you end up recalling his name or?
No, I didn't, because actually I didn't think he was going to show up and say what he said he was going to say. So
what was your, okay. So one of my questions is the sentiment. You're obviously getting railroaded at this point, right? And it's obvious that that's the case. Did you feel like at the time, not knowing what you know now, did you feel like at the time the system would kind of take care of itself and work the way it's supposed to? So you were panicked, but had a little bit of faith?
Yeah, I did. So I was like, I never seen a person actually go to jail for a crime that they didn't commit. I only witnessed that one time in my life, and I was a kid, the Linnell Jeter story. When Linnell Jeter was like the first African-American guy that it happened to. They made a movie about it, and I saw it as a kid. And we, like, in school, we had to do like a project about it. And that's the only time, but it didn't dawn on me then. But I thought, like, man, maybe 48 hours, 72 hours, because the street talks.
Yeah.
And once the street talks, the people going to come out and say, like, nah, these guys didn't do it because these not these kind of individuals. So the morning that once I realized that, I said, okay, I'm going to get a system time to do what it does. See if I'm going to be proven guilty before, being even tried.
Right.
So the first bad sign that I got is when I went to arraignment. They gave me $1 million bond. I was like, oh, shucks. I'm not going to get out of this. I can't afford $1 million bond.
Yeah.
So
10% of that's still a lot.
Of money. So I'm going to have to sit in jail and fight this. But I'm still thinking things going to go okay for me. So the next worst thing was me meeting my, defense attorney. And when I meet my defense attorney, just the look he gave me when he saw me, I didn't have no confidence in it.
And this is an appointed attorney?
This appointed attorney named Jerry Birdwell. And I sit down in front of him. Before he could even say anything, I said, I want a polygraph test because I didn't commit this crime. And the first thing he told me, like, no, we're not going to give it to you. I'm like, why? He said, because you may fail it. I'm like, if I tell you to give me a polygraph test, I'm not planning on failing that test.
Right.
I'm planning on passing that test
Right.
because we talking about capital murder. Now, at the time, I don't even know what capital murder means. I don't even know I didn't even know it was life or death because I never dealt with anything like this before.
Sure.
So now.
But your point was maybe to get some traction with your defense to where something could be worked out. I mean, it's obviously not going to be admissible in a trial, but if beforehand they can say, look, we have evidence
that this guy's telling the truth. He didn't do it. And once he denied me and then told me like, and the court is going to deny you too. And I'm going to tell them to deny you because if you feel it, then, you know, you look even more guilty. And I'm like, what if I pass it? Then what would that do for me? He couldn't answer that question. And the next thing he said, oh, it's inadmissible anyway. Right then, I knew he felt like I actually committed this crime. So he wasn't going to fight for me 110%.
That's tough, yeah.
That's the tough pill to swallow. So now, before my trial, I got to think about this attorney representing me. And now I'm like, what is this jury selection going to look like? How are we going to handle this? And
your attorney plays a huge role in that.
Yeah, plays a huge role. So now the 72 hours has passed of me thinking like, they're not going to get this right. I'm going to have to fight this in court because the boyfriend, the guy, Derek Anderson, who actually shot and killed the Hispanic drug dealer, confessed to his girlfriend right after he did it. He went home and told her, look, I just robbed and killed this drug dealer. And
you're finding this out much later, which we'll get to, right?
No, like maybe a week or two later. And
how did you come to know this? Through your defense attorney?
Yeah, no. My girlfriend told me that he went home crying, the guy that killed this Hispanic, and confessed to his girlfriend, like, look, I robbed and killed this Hispanic drug dealer. Cloud and Chris is in jail for this crime. I'm leaving town. You go to the police station and tell them I did it and see if they'll let those guys go. She went to the police station and told them those exact words. They told her to never come back, never say anything else about it, because we had the people that we believe committed this crime. So once that didn't happen, and you like, she came down here and said, yeah, they turned her away. You're like, it's not going well.
Yeah. Now you're smelling I'm crook. It's not just crooked. There's a crook involved in this situation.
This is a straight frame up. You're like, this is a straight frame up. Now it's tunnel vision and set in. Now they don't want to look no other way. And people telling them who actually did it. So now we're at jury selection. The first group of 30 come in, and all of them said, no, we cannot find him guilty because you had no physical evidence. How we know the lady's not lying? They excuse those. They bring in 30 more. The next 30 say the same exact thing. No, you can't do it. Where's the physical evidence? You got a gun? No. You got fingerprints? No. Murder weapon? No. We don't have any.
No GSR? Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah. The next group of 30 come in. The same thing. We can't do it. There's no way. The fourth group of 30 came in. One African-American guy stood up and said, I can find him guilty just on her word alone. I was like, are you kidding me? Out of all people, you, an African-American, saying this in court. Things that other people saying we can't do because there's no physical evidence.
Right. Nothing to support it. It's a stressful situation to be in.
Right.
You're of a different race. And we've talked about that before too. You know, when you hang around people of your own race, you tend to be able to identify them a lot quicker.
Right.
So you've got somebody of an opposing race that's making an identification after a stressful encounter. She's the only one. There are other people that are saying that things counter to that fact.
Right. Yeah.
And you're still getting shoved in the corner.
That's the worst case of misidentification. It's cross-racial Misidentification.
I would completely agree with you.
Yeah,
And
that's the worst one. Yes, the worst one. So once the African American guy stood up and said he can find me guilty, maybe 5 minutes later, I had an all-white jury panel.
Mm.
I was like, now you said this, but they didn't even choose you. So now I'm looking at, when I look around the courtroom, I was like, only thing of color in this courtroom is like me and the furniture. That's it. Everything else is white. And I'm like, the judge is white, prosecutor white, my lawyer is white, second in the prosecutor is white, and all 12 jury members is white. You like, oh my God.
Who's going to understand enough about you and the culture to understand the potential that there's an innocent person? And it's amazing.
Man, and then like once the trial got ready to begin, and I think the hardest part for me was my trial. It was like 6 months before I went to trial. Now I'm like, could I accept death? Because this is a life and death situation. You either get a life sentence or it's death penalty for you. Because what if they find me guilty of the death penalty? How could I tell two boys, 4 and 5 years old, that, you ain't about to see your dad anymore because he's about to get executed? It's hard to explain to kids. So I'm like, man, I got to really sit here and fathom, can I accept death? Because these people could kill me.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that really gave me a lot of relief was when a judge asked me, she was like, why shouldn't I seek the death penalty? And the only thing I could come up with, like, how could you kill an innocent man? She looked at me, she said, you know what? You saved your own life today. We're not going to kill you, but we're going to give you a life sentence before a trial even started. So they told me right off the top, I already know I'm going to be found guilty, but I escaped the death penalty. She asked me a question. I gave her the answer.
But she gave you a statement that said you're going to get life, and this is before the trial.
Yeah, before the trial. So I'm like, it was so crazy because I wrote to this judge and told about me and my attorney not getting along. I think he feel like I committed this crime. Before my trial started, don't you know she read some of that letter in the courtroom in front of my attorney?
Oh.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Seriously? I was like, I've never saw that done before. Yeah. Never. I'm like, you read this letter that I'm saying me and my attorney don't see eye to eye.
Yeah. And he's not believing in me. And now you punch him in the gut with a letter.
Reading it out loud. I was like, oh my God, is this even legal for you to do this? I'd say 2.5 hours later, I was convicted of capital murder. My capital murder trial lasted like 2.5, 3 hours.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So, I mean, that in itself is like a whole separate podcast because, I mean, just the process that by which you were given the attorney, right, the lack of faith, the disbelief from the attorney, the at least potentially racially biased jury, the biased judge, obviously. And then the fact that it only lasts 2.5 hours. I mean, how do you even collect enough people and get everything organized in that amount of time? I don't know. So I've testified plenty of times, and there's, getting the courtroom set up and people introduced and opening statements is that long.
Yeah.
And so did they call any witnesses?
Yeah, they actually a couple of the officers got on the stand and testified to the fact that it wasn't nothing linking me to this crime. And I was like, oh wow, they really got up there and said that. But at the same time, the prosecutor had already put on his, Oscar performance. I always consider courtrooms being like, a movie. And whoever put on the best performance will win an Oscar.
Yeah.
And a lot of time it's the prosecutor because the judge allowed the prosecutor to do what he willing to do, what he or she wants in the court building. So it's like you fighting against two people. You fighting against the judge and the prosecutor.
Yeah, it's a lot of salesmanship, right?
Yeah.
Because you have normal people assembled in a jury
Right.
that are easily influenced by
Right.
some passionate speech that they're going to give. That,
Right.
and that's fascinating too. So I assume that your representation didn't bode quite as well, and when they did their statements, and did you actually call the officers that testified that, or was that prosecution calling them?
I think some of the prosecution side called them.
Okay.
But I told my attorney, which officers at the time I could remember their names, was like, hey, reach out to this officer and see what he says.
Right.
And he did what he said he would do. It's not linking you to this crime.
So the guy that pulled you aside ended up testifying?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was like, it's not going to make any difference. Their mind is already made up about me being guilty. It's just about they're not going to kill me, but they're going to give me a capital life sentence. And, that's exactly what happened. And it was funny. She was like, do you have anything you want to say? I was like, yeah. For one, can I hug my family? She allowed me to do that. And I was like, you made a mistake. I'm not the one that committed this crime, but I'm sure in a matter of years, I'll be back in the same courtroom being exonerated. And I left it at that, didn't say nothing, didn't have an outburst.
Were you sure of that? Or was it just something that you were saying with...
I was trying to speak it into existence. The exoneration, right. I don't care how long it takes.
The spirit of hope.
Yeah, the spirit of hope, the spirit of faith. That's all. Once you're in this position, what else do you have?
Right.
So, that's exactly what I did. And she was like, okay, you'll be sentenced to prison for the next 40. Capital life sentence, you do 40 years to be eligible for parole. She was like, yeah, I see you in 40 when you come up for parole.
And you were how old at that time?
I was 27 at that time.
Okay, so 27 years old.
I'd have been 66.
Barely had enough time to
enjoy
get your life started.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, man, I mean, it's obviously an unbelievable story about how the railroading happened and the tunnel vision and the way the system didn't have checks and balances that made any sense during that process. I wonder what your thoughts are specifically on, because this is one of my questions anyway, and with the way you recounted the story, I think I know the answer, but I think it's important because I still think people leverage this all too often. But what are your thoughts are in general, aside from your case, on leveraging witness identifications?
It's crazy when you allow one person to send somebody to prison just on their word alone. I can say you just robbed 7-Eleven and just that, my word alone, you're being convicted for it. Now you may get looked at differently because you're Caucasian, you're a white person.
I understand.
But when you're talking about a black person, African American, like they're gonna run with it. And that's all they need to know. Because they feel like he's an easy target. Probably have a criminal record already.
All the racial biases in place.
All of it. All of it is already in place for him to be like, we can throw his life away like a piece of trash. Because it really don't even matter to us anymore.
There's such an ignorance that's where it carries over.
Yeah.
And they talk about systemic racism and things being passed down. This is a true exemplification of that. When people just are able to exclude facts that normally would scream something in their conscience, that are able to dismiss that for the reasons you're saying. I think that just comes from being weaned outside of a culture, being less familiar with a culture,
right,
and just having a stereotypical person in your mind about, what everybody is like this person.
That's just like what's going on in society today. If an African American guy is walking down the street with a bag in his hand, and he's in a middle to upper class neighborhood, it only takes one person to call the cop and say, "Oh, African American guy walking in the neighborhood looks suspicious." And then you go to ask yourself, what does suspicious looks like? Because the last 3 people that has been killed by officers, That was the call. Looking suspicious. And I'm like, what does looking suspicious mean? That I'm walking with a grocery sack in my hand, minding my own business, not bothering nobody? You look out the window and see a black person walking down the street. He's looking suspicious to you because he's in your neighborhood. If you come to our neighborhood and walk down the middle of the street, you'll look suspicious to us,
Right.
because it's not those many, white people in my neighborhood like that.
And there might be some merit to saying he looks out of place, but then the follow-up is where the difficulty comes.
When they're calling the police.
Yeah. And when they show up with any kind of intent other than, let's just see what the guy's doing.
Because when they drive up, it's about being aggressive.
Right.
Like, if you want respect, you got to be able to give it. You want us to bag the blue, you got to respect the black. You know what I mean? And when you don't do that, it furthers push that bridge apart where, African American people, we don't trust cops at all. It's not something we did. It's the things that when you be profiled on any and everything, that's a problem, because no other race get profiled like we do.
So amidst all the issues and having a giant stalemate kind of where we are, this is a little bit of a tangent, but it's important. And I would love to hear your feedback on this. Is what types of solutions do you think there are in play? It doesn't mean there's a quick fix or anything that might solve it completely, because there's always going to be some kind of, bigots creeping into some situations. But obviously, you hear lots of people, and I would agree that there are great cops who are well-meaning, and there are always the extremes. But the problem is when the extremes keep cropping up and being brought in front of us, it's causing mistrust, which is the big issue.
Right.
I mean, how do we repair the trust? What are some ways that you've thought about that could get us at least in the right direction?
I think about, coming together, doing things in the community, doing charity basketball games, fundraising, back to school, things, giving away backpacks, things that helps the community where we feel like, we can't trust y'all son because we know the kids are our future.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get together and make these kids have the brightest futures they can. Let's have open dialogue when we can about this kind of situation. Let's have town hall meetings with cops about what we can do. Can we set up basketball camps, football camps where we can bridge these gaps?
Yeah.
Because majority of the time when you're dealing with African American people, if you bring sports involved in it or music, that brings the people out. You know what I mean? So those are the things that you can really focus on. And when you do that, it brings about resources. Our community needs a lot of resources in our neighborhoods. So the more people we can get out and embrace and bring together is the more resources that we can have.
So kind of a collaborative, charitable arm. It doesn't have to be a permanent. I love the idea, first of all, because it's a way to focus on caring for other people together.
Yeah.
And I think those are the times where I find that a lot of the animosity between Americans goes away, is when we have to kind of join hands for a different cause, a better cause. And that it helps us to look into the other person's eyes and realize that there's a lot of similarities here because we're having to go into this together.
Right.
I love the idea. That's fantastic. I love that. Tell me how a person who has lived a life of a successful path and taking care of his children and everything else, all the stuff that we've already heard about, this is what anyone would want for their children, to take a path and have the determination, the bootstrap worker. How does somebody like that deal with prison once you get to the realization of, okay, this is going to be my life for a while, if not ever? How do you deal with the criminal element and having to essentially engage with that when, your experience has really been with quote unquote normal people or whatever, what's a day in the life like in that situation?
You got to have strength. You have to be strong, because it's one thing we see in prison, you can embody You can imprison our body, but never our mind. When I say that, when I went to prison, the first thing that I wanted to do, that I needed to do, was build a foundation. Because the foundation, once you build that foundation, then you can build on top of that foundation. And it was things that I had written down in a book that I needed to do. And this was going to keep me from getting in trouble in prison and just being the modest prisoner that I can be, but all the time still stay strong when you need to be. And my foundation was this. When I went to prison, I was 135 pounds, skinny, little bitty guy. What was the first thing I said I got to do? I got to get in the kitchen. I got to eat. I got to put on weight because all these, protecting myself. Because all these guys already outweigh me by 50, 60 pounds. So once I said, okay, get a job in the kitchen, what's next? Hey, I got to lift weights. I got to bulk up. I got to get stronger. Got to get faster. And then number 3 was I wanted to educate myself. I never graduated high school. So I was like, let me read as many books as I can. Let me suck up that knowledge. So I ended up reading like 3 books per week till I got out of prison. I was a book reader. In prison, you read a lot of books. Whatever you feel like your heart desire at that particular moment, read that book. That's going to put you in a safe place.
Yeah.
Start reading about 3 books a week. And then I got back into soap operas. See, grew up watching soap operas with my mom. Even before I went to prison, I was watching soap operas. But growing up as a kid, my brother coming home from prison, he would tell me soap operas are mandatory in prison. I'm like, what? He like, yeah, it's mandatory. News, sports, and soap operas are mandatory. I'm like, you kidding me? Say, no, seriously. You got the baddest of the baddest guys in prison watching soap opera. Seriously. And that was the foundation that I lived by every day. I went to work. I worked out in the rec yard. I read my books. I watched soap operas for that 13 years. That foundation kept me even keeled where I didn't get too caught up in the prison life.
Fascinating. And so you were able to protect yourself, obviously, to whatever degree.
Yeah, you're gonna like, it's crazy because no matter who you are, what sets you with, whatever you're claiming, you're gonna get tested. And I got tested early, but I'm from Oak Cliff. I'm from a rough neighborhood. So I grew up fighting. So I didn't worry about that. So living an easy life, having a job, working, doing everything you want to do in life kind of softens you up a little bit. But
it didn't mean you didn't have the tenacity.
Exactly. Growing up in the neighborhood, that's when that light switch come on. Instantly, once you get that time, that light switch.
Yeah.
Turning back on now.
Right.
The street code, street mentality, everything comes back. It's not like you going to work punching in a time card.
Right.
This strap on your boots and be prepared for whatever. And it was so funny, like, commissary line, you put your bags in line to go to commissary. It's an order. You can't break that order. So they feel like you find the weakest person to try to break that order. And they were like, okay, that's the new guy over there. Let's see if we can break the order on him.
Put the new boot to the test.
Yeah, put it to the test. So I'm already eager for it because in the county, having a capital murder case, you in the worst of jails. You ain't in no easygoing, you on probation,
right?
Cellmates. You got people that's aggravated robbery, aggravated kidnap, aggravated rape, murder. So these are the people you surrounded. So you're going to be tested there anyway. So I was already up for the test. And once they sent their test at me, I passed it real well. They were like, that's one of those little bitty guys you don't want to mess with because he know how to fight. But at the same time, it was crazy. It's a saying. If you haven't seen your friend in a long time, it's either 2 places he's at. He's either dead or he's in prison. And a lot of those guys that I grew up with was in the same prison that I was at. So once word got out that this happened and one person heard my name, they were like, okay.
I know who that
Yeah, I
is.
know who that is. So send somebody over there and be like, hey, we, don't worry about that one no more. So that ain't gonna happen no more because he gonna handle himself, but at the same time, we gonna bag him.
Right.
And that was just from the neighborhood that I grew up in. Yeah, it's the neighborhood I grew up in.
That's good. That's fortunate if there's such a thing as fortunate.
Right. That's a fortunate. Having friends in prison is always a blessing. Trust me.
A lot of that contingent on how you act outside of prison too. You don't want to like run into the people that you've crossed.
Exactly.
Right? So it always comes back.
It was crazy because some of the guys that used to actually shop at the grocery store that I worked at end up coming to prison because, they did illegal things. They were like, I never thought I would see you in prison for this kind of case. They like, man, they know y'all didn't do it. We know who did it, and we was trying to tell them who did it. They just didn't want to hear about it.
They even knew
they knew it. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, and that leads to one of the more important aspects of your stay was that you started interviewing and getting to know other prisoners who were actually innocent. And I think we touched on this a little bit, but talk about how you managed over time to interview people and discern who was really telling the truth and who wasn't, and what's different about your method than maybe what a detective would use to come up with some kind of a decision about that.
Basically, like I was housed at one of the probably the biggest prison in the system. We housed 5,000 inmates. So now I'm dealing with all these different personalities a day. And the most time you see, and it was crazy. I didn't realize that I was, keening in on my private investigator skills by questioning these guys about their case, because a lot of people in prison don't talk about their cases.
Okay.
But you have certain people that will open up to you about their cases if you like, hey, was wrongfully convicted, say, this is what happened to me. And he go to telling you this what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
So now you start being in this group of people that saying they wrongfully convicted. So now you start hearing all these different stories of men saying they was wrongfully convicted. So now maybe a month or two later, you go back to the same guy and be like, yeah, I remember you told me that this was kind of similar to my case. And I'd say something he told me, and you're like, uh-oh. You don't remember that? And it's supposed to happen to you?
Yeah, this is not
so
very
you started
consistent.
Seeing how they are lean back or their eyes are shift, they go to looking up. So those are like, he might be lying. He's looking up in the sky. Is he thinking about something to say? Is he trying to make up something as he go along? So you're like, okay, I'll come back to you another time. And then you'll go to the next person that told you the same story, that, these are the people that you want to talk to because you want to know if their stories are consistent like yours.
Mm-hmm.
And so many times you pick holes in people's cases, like you told me this, but now you saying this. You sure you didn't do it? And now they question like, you sure you didn't do it? Because now it's a whole different story. So as you pick up on that, and then it's one thing about talking to all them people, you get a good BS meter. That meter goes up. Once you interview a lot of people and people go to telling you about their cases, that BS meter is right on point. You like, yeah, now you already telling the lie off the top. You can kind of tell.
Just having spent so much time with them.
And you know how they do every day, their daily routines, how they act. And when you go to asking them tough questions, you shifting, you're looking away, you saying things that you don't normally say. Right. But when you ask me, my story never wavers. It stays the same. Body stays the same. And as I'm telling you my story, you may see tears water up in my eye because it hurts so bad to relive it or to even tell this story. So when people not reacting the way you react, it's not, because the people that you actually feel that's wrongfully convicted, that's telling the truth, well, you're going to see them tears in them eyes. You're going to see them eyes water.
Right.
Because they feeling that passion And they like, man, this didn't happen to me. And that feeling comes like, man, I was been screwed over.
Yeah.
So that's how you really start picking up on those kind of things. Then, and pretty much the same now that I'm out, the tactics is pretty much the same because you used to, people making certain movements with their body when they line, or you trying to see how they breathe. Because I'm watching for breathing. I'm watching for eye movement. I'm watching if their feet is shaking, they crossing their hands, they not. I'm trying to observe the whole person while I'm talking to them. So when the uncomfortable questions come, can he or she deal with them? And how do they deal with them?
And so, but you're in a more disadvantageous position now that you're out, because you ended up making kind of a pact with several of your fellow prisoners, right?
Yeah.
And it seems like the relationships you established, like if we get to know each other over a long period of time, it's much easier for me to tell. Like,
exactly,
there's my BS meter becomes, which is something that when you're trying to interview somebody in a few hours and just get a glimpse of their entire life and the situation, it's a lot more difficult, obviously.
Yeah.
Tell me about the pact and how that led to getting out and doing what you're doing now.
Well, basically at my exoneration, I saw like 25 other men that was falsely in prison. And we all go to every exoneration in Dallas County and sometime outside of Dallas County because we want to be there to support that person that's getting exonerated. And what pretty much we do, everybody give them $100 bill at the exoneration. If it's 25 of us will give them $100 bill. That's just money to have in your pocket just to get your basic necessities. Because when you get out of prison, you don't have anything. It's not like parole where they're going to give you a check when you get out. When you get exonerated, you just kicked out. They don't care if you got a place to stay, money in your pocket, you just out of prison. So that's how that bond became with us, going to the exonerations, giving people money. And then once they got out, we would take them to get their driving license, birth certificate, social security card, because we knew what it took for us to get ours. And the struggle that we had to do to get ours, because when I first got out, only thing I had was a newspaper clipping of identification. And I'm taking that around plus my TDC identification. Like, this is all I got. I don't have anything else. Right. And we had a social worker that would go around with us at that same time named Jamie Page. She was a social worker at UTA, University of Texas in Arlington, which is the school that got me exonerated. And she would go around with us and take us around and try to get our identification. And we told her, like, it's enough of us out now. This shouldn't be your job anymore. We take that up on
mentor.
Us. Yeah, we can do that ourselves. So that's what we started to do.
And the exoneration itself kind of happened. I mean, I kind of glossed over that. I didn't mean to, and we will come back to touch the foundation too. But ultimately, you already knew that the confession was made when you were still being arrested or held. So that ended up coming out again. How did that end up manifesting in an exoneration this time versus the first time when?
Well, the first time was when they confessed what we had was a racist DA and a racist criminal justice all the way around system. So the second time around was this, like one of the actual guys that I was in prison with. My brother was incarcerated with him, but he didn't know this guy was my brother. My brother worked in a prison barbershop. So you know how men go to the barbershops and go to talking. So the guy sit in my brother's barber chair, my brother cutting his hair. The guy stated, hey, it's 2 men in prison for the crime me and my co-defendant did. We robbed and killed a Hispanic drug dealer, and it's 2 guys in prison for it. And my brother was like, wait a minute. Can you tell me something about the guy that's locked up for you? He knew everything about me. He said he worked at Tom Thumb grocery store. He has 2 kids, girlfriend named Brandy. He drive a Forest green and gold Lexus. My brother said, dude, that's my little brother. He was like, no way. He was like, yeah, it's my little brother. What I want you to do is come to the rec yard. I'm going to show you a picture of him and then approve my point. Guy went to the rec yard and my brother showed him the picture. He said, that's the guy I'm talking about. He said, yeah, that's the guy that's in prison for me for the crime I committed. I said, well, what I want you to do, write an application. He said, I've been wanting to write it, but now I'm going to write it for sure. So we sent it to the district attorney's office. The district attorney denied the affidavit. And the crazy part about our criminal justice system, it's so contradictory because they told me it was two things I had to do to get my court case appealed. New discovered evidence for one, and a person coming forward confessing to that crime. This guy came back and confessed to the crime, gave you major detail about the crime.
Mm-hmm.
You got both of the things all rolled up from one person, new discovered evidence and a confession. They denied it because they said this case has no DNA in it. My case didn't have any DNA in it.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody could come back and lie about this. And I'm like, are you serious? But I didn't even get mad about it, or I wasn't even surprised that the district attorney office said that. Because for one, it was racist. I knew that.
Right.
And for two, if I had cops testify in my behalf saying I couldn't be the killer, you think they gonna believe an ex-con? A guy that's in prison right now for crimes he did commit? So it didn't even upset me that much because I was like, I knew they wasn't gonna do it. They didn't even believe the officers. What makes you think they're gonna believe him?
Well, racist or not, it can't be any less disappointing.
Exactly.
I mean, because that's your only link.
But I wasn't even like, it didn't even faze me at all.
Wow.
No, because I just knew it wasn't that time yet.
By then you were expecting the worst as opposed to the beginning. You had faith in the system. And then when the system just completely dumped you.
I don't have no faith in the system no more. So I'm not even worried about that.
All right.
So the next thing that happened that shined all the light to it was Craig Watkins, the first African-American district attorney in the state of Texas history, getting elected. And we couldn't believe it because, being men in prison, sitting up watching a big race like the DA race that, really handles the criminal justice department.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, man, we need somebody like that. But we didn't think he was going to win. Dallas County?
Same thing.
Seriously?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Dallas County. And dude, he ended up winning. I mean, it was crazy. You would think that the prison I was on had won a prison Super Bowl. Dude, everybody banging on lockers, hollering, jumping up and down on the table because they actually felt like we had somebody in position that knew the struggle of African-American men in our court system.
Yep.
And he knew it. And the first thing he said was, it was going to be a lot of changes made in Dallas County. And one of the first things he wanted to do is go back and look over cases of wrongful convictions. And he was stating that if you have DNA that hadn't been tested, write to my office and we'll see if we can get it done.
Okay.
Changes was about to be made. Dude, in about 3 months, I seen about 6 people get exonerated just from the prison that I was on from this DA.
Wow.
Clockwork. I mean, boom, one. All these guys I worked in the kitchen with, I worked in the field with, and all these people were saying they was innocent.
Mm-hmm.
Now you actually seeing.
And that evidence had even been there. Not too many years, I guess, by this time. I don't know what year was.
He confessed in 2002. Craig Watkins won seat in 2006.
Okay.
I didn't get released in 2009, so I ended up doing 7 extra years from that confession.
Right.
And when I started seeing all these guys get out, and I seen these same people from the Conviction Integrity Unit, the CIU, this DA Craig Watkins invented this. Now, a lot of people has adapted the CIU, the Conviction Integrity Unit, just solely based on working on wrongful conviction cases.
Yeah, and they saw how effective it was.
It was. So everybody started implementing it. And then I was like, I'm seeing the same attorney, the same prosecutor, the same investigator doing these cases. Now, they can look at my case, maybe I'll get out of prison. So my case being a non-DNA case, I wrote every innocent project I could think of. Everybody's denying me because there's no DNA in it.
Right.
And I'm like, the same thing y'all told me I had to do was bring new discovered evidence or somebody to come confess. They not even, they not even respecting what the criminal court
At least
they not respecting it. So what can I do?
Right.
And the change was you have to have somebody in office that has compassion about what's going on in our criminal justice system. Henry Wade didn't, but Craig Watkins did. And when I started seeing all these guys go home, I was like, man,
That's
I got
amazing.
a chance.
Yeah.
I might have a chance. And I wrote to the district attorney's office, and not did I know it, UTA had started an undergraduate law class with number undergraduate students.
Mm-hmm.
They gave my case to an 11th grade student at UTA, and she got me out of prison. 11th grader, UTA, got me out of prison. It was crazy because she came to the prison to get me to confess to the crime because they already had one confession from one of the guys. So they needed the second guy. They wanted that to be me. And me and her talked for about 10 minutes. And once I told her it wasn't me, I wasn't going to confess to a crime that I didn't do. We might as well leave the same way we came.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so crazy that both doors for us to exit was locked. And we turned around. It's like we was looking at each other like we was finna have a Western duel off. It was just like that. We were just sitting up there looking at each other like, who gonna pull first?
Mm-hmm.
And she walked back up to me and was like, I want to talk to you again. I'm like, nah, I don't think so. She was like,
I
Mr.
already
Scott.
told her this is going.
I'm like, nah. And she was like, Mr. Scott, can you talk to me just for a second? I'm like, no, but you see this innocent kid that's, trying to do the right thing for people.
Yeah.
So
they need a little education and push in the right direction. Yeah.
So I said, well, I started feeling some kind of way. And then she said, Mr. Scott, please talk to me again. I said, have a seat. So on the one condition, she said, what? Don't ever ask me to confess to a crime that I didn't commit. We can have a conversation. You have my word. I'm not going to tell you to do that anymore. And I explained to her exactly what I did that day. And she was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this back to Craig Watkins and I'm going to see what he says about it. Say, okay, fine. Maybe, 3 weeks later, I'm waiting on this answer to come back about what they're going to do. And I get a letter stating that, the district attorney's office sees that it could be something could be done about your case because of the fact people has came back and confessed to this crime.
There's some merit to the complaint.
And not only that, in detail, they told him what a gun was. They told him about the murder, how they did it, how they set it up. So with DNA, that's what it has to be. With non-DNA, it has to be a detailed confession from somebody that actually had to be there to know these details.
Right.
And once they did that, they were like, that's enough. But Mr. Scott, only one condition, we can let you out. And I'm reading it. And then when I saw the attorney name, Michelle Moore, that's the same attorney I said I needed. I started seeing everybody getting exonerated through this same attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And they awarded me her. I was like, oh, I'm going home. I hadn't seen her do like 9 to 10 exonerations already, and all of them from the unit that I'm on.
Yeah. So that track
yeah, the
record.
track record good. And they said the only thing you have to do now is pass the polygraph test. I said, what? I said, I asked for
Now
this.
you're gonna give me.
Now you're gonna get. I said, man, look, I asked for this 13 years ago for a polygraph test, and y'all denied me. But now I have to take one. But I didn't care about that. I was like, bring the test on. I'm ready to take it. And it was crazy. So the day we took it, his name is I always forget my guy name, but he's been doing polygraph tests for 52 years.
Oh wow.
And when I came in and told him I'm ready right now, let's go. Put me in that seat and let's do it. He said, you know what? I've never in my life seen a person come in so eager to take a polygraph test like you have. And he said, and I really want you to pass it. He said, you know why? He said, because you'll be the first non-DNA test to get exonerated in Dallas County history.
Wow.
He said, you're going to set a major precedent for people that's still behind in prison. They can follow the same thing you did and they can get out via DNA polygraph test.
Wow. Amazing.
I say, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. He said, we can rely on you. I said, you ain't got to rely too much because I'm going to pass it 100%.
You were sure?
Well, sure. He was like, I've never seen it before. He said, well, let's take the test.
Assuming he's not a crook, you're going to pass it.
Right. So this polygraph test lasted like 5.5, 6 hours.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's a beatdown. Oh, yeah. It's a beatdown. He gonna talk to you. He gonna get you comfortable. Then he gonna get you uncomfortable. It's like a beatdown.
That's a long polygraph.
And that's how I was like, oh my God. And then once you feel like you're at your vulnerable, let's start. You're like, oh, seriously? Right now?
Yeah.
Nerves on 100. And I went through it and he graced it right in front of you. Like, what a table that you seeing him over there marking, you like, I hope those are all good marks for me. And you hear him over there marking. You're like, oh my God. And he walks out and said, I'll be back. You like, my whole life is on that thing. He was just grading. Yeah. And you ain't really praying. You just thinking about it like, I told the truth. If it come back that I'm lying, then I know something is wrong. But I know in my heart that I didn't commit this crime.
Right.
And he came back. He said, look, I concur. Police chief concur. This attorney's office concur. And the chief of polygraph concur that you were telling the truth.
That you were telling the truth.
That I was telling the truth. I didn't know what to think and what to feel. I just know it was like a 250-pound brick that just got lifted off of my back.
Somebody that agreed with you for the first time.
Oh my God. I was like, finally, somebody that understands when a person say they're telling the truth to actually believe them. And he was like, you're finna be a free man or whatever. So my attorney called me. They gave me the phone. She said, congratulations. She said, in that room next door, it's 22 officers, police officers, was waiting on you to fail. And she said, why? They don't want to admit that they made a mistake. She said, majority of those cops are the cops that was there the night you was arrested. I was like, wow, are you serious? So it's crazy. When I'm walking out, in polygraph room, they're in a line, like a long straight line. They want to shake my hand. And I come out, I'm like, what they doing? And the guy, Jim Hanman, he's the detective, he's the investigator over our wrongful conviction cases. He said, they want to shake your hand. And I was like, hell no. I ain't shaking no what? Seriously? And he was like, no, you don't have to shake their hand. I say, I'm not going to shake their hand. And before I left, it was crazy. I said, now y'all looking into a face of a man that was falsely in prison for something y'all did. So now y'all cannot ever say there's not an innocent person in prison.
Yeah.
Because it is. I'm a living witness to that.
Right.
So take that into accountability and admit when you made a mistake.
That's a key.
Walked out, got in the car, and 2 days later, we are now. It was crazy because after I passed the polygraph test, they wanted to get the shooter off the street. And I'm like, no, I'm ready to go home. I'm found actually innocent right
Why
now.
are you holding me?
They held me like 2.5 more weeks.
What?
Yeah. I'm like, man, am I ever going to go home?
It doesn't even make sense.
It don't make no sense.
So the public knows that somebody's inside,
right?
Regardless,
exactly. So
Ridiculous.
He was like, "I'm sorry, we got to get him off the street." And I'm like, "I'm not worried about it."
So one of y'all can sit in my place and tell the community.
I'm like, I'm innocent right now. Y'all know it, but you're gonna make me sit in here until you get this guy. They were like, "Yeah, we got to make sure. We got to get him in jail." 2.5 weeks later, they came and told me, "We got him. You'll be going home in 48 hours. The best news I had heard in life forever. It was time that I could see my time in jail was coming to an end. The end of that rainbow, there was that pot of gold waiting on me. My freedom was that pot of gold.
It's an amazing story. I still can't believe there's so much stuff, even at the tail end of these things, where there's so much hesitation to just move forward with the truth and everything. So I really admire your courage and your amount of your conviction to stay the course despite bad news at every turn. And then you've taken now that just ridiculous experience. I can't even fathom. I don't want to say I can relate at all. But you've taken that and turned it also into other people's gold. So I mean, so now you have an organization that you've formed and you're working full time to help others to get their exonerations and doing all that stuff, which is absolutely amazing. You tell me about the foundation and your documentary and your book.
Yeah. Actually, I founded House of Renewed Hope in 2011. I actually started it in prison as talking to the guys in prison about what could we do to help the system. And everybody was like, hey, man, we got to go lobby. We got to go get, we got to become lobbyists. We got to go to Austin and try to get these laws and bills passed so things can govern us the way it governs other people.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I was like, that's cool. But also, I want to help those that they can't help themselves as well. Like I was in this position. Should nobody be in this position? There's nobody's out here trying to help. So that's what my organization is going to be founded on. Helping wrongfully convicted individuals get their freedom again. And that's what we've been doing ever since then. It's been going great. That organization has gotten a lot of notoriety and hopefully it gets even more.
Yeah, rightfully so. Certainly support it here.
Whatever, it's a lot of things came from House of Renewed Hope, which was True Conviction. The documentary we premiered at Tribeca Film Festival in 2017. It's a great film. It's about how 3 wrongfully convicted men came together, started a detective agency, and trying to free as many people as they can.
Yeah, it's a great watch for sure, and I'll link that in the cast too, so people can go down and click on it. You can watch it on a lot of different platforms now. It's fascinating. Great story.
Yeah, it took us 5 years to make that film. And what we wanted to do at the end of that film, we wanted to show a success story. And that's why we was able to get Isaiah Hill out of prison after serving 41 years. Helping that guy get his freedom was one of the best things that ever happened in my life because I can truly say that I saved a life.
Absolutely.
Because he probably would have died in prison because didn't nobody care about him anymore. And everybody that he know and loved had passed on. So it was just him. And when he reached out to me, I felt like it was something I wanted to do. Once I couldn't get him exonerated, I was like, I'm going to fight for your freedom anyway. I'm going to try to help you get paroled. And being able to talk to the parole board, being able to talk to the wardens of the prison, and everybody that knew Isaiah Hill made that task just that much easier because they saw him being in Rolling Men's Journal magazine. They seen his story in LA Times. Then they saw the trailer of him being in the trailer of the film True Conviction.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, you got a good support cast. So we feel like we are able to let you go because you got people that really believe in you.
Yep. They're going to yeah. Because that's an important element that I
yeah.
learned from that
Yeah.
documentary too, is that part of the consideration process for getting paroled is knowing that you have people that will take care and control custody of you. But not only that, but help provide a path for you.
Yeah.
Okay. And this one, tell me about this one then. This is
it's called Tested. It's about how 12 wrongfully imprisoned men held on to hope. And how that book came about was Dory Budd and Peyton Budd. Dory Budd and her daughter, Peyton Budd, wanted to write a book about things of this nature, things where they felt like God had a way of working himself into the play. And Dory used to be a prosecutor for Henry Wade, the same guy that got majority of us, wrongfully imprisoned.
mm-hmm.
And it was crazy. So she called Craig Watkins, and he was the DA at the time. And she said, could you bring some guys? So I want to talk to them about doing this and doing that. So it was about 20 of us showed up.
Very cool.
And it was so crazy because a lot of people, some of the guys that was there had the wrong impression about what the book was going to be about. And the first meeting is like, we was inside of a prison day room. We got to arguing and fussing and things of that nature. And we was like, look, she want to do a book about us. She was a prosecutor. And she said, the main thing that I did before I called y'all in here was to check to see if I had falsely imprisoned anybody. And she said, no, I have not falsely imprisoned anybody. She said, I worked in like the kids department. So I was trying to protect the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I understand y'all don't know anything about me. If y'all don't want to do the book, it's fine. And about 12 of us said, no, let's do it. I think people should hear these stories about men that was wrongfully convicted. But what they thought, they was going to hear a lot of prison stories, which they didn't. They heard a little about prison story, but the most of it was about the life we had before prison. And we was able to share those details of the moments where right before this happened, this what we was doing.
Yeah.
And it came out as really good because that book came out the same day as the movie Conviction with Hilary Swank.
Oh.
And we was able to fly to Hollywood, do the red carpet with Hilary Swank and cast.
Oh, yeah.
We was able to walk down the red carpet with Hilary Swank. Dude, I actually got a kiss on the jaw from her. I'm like, this is a 2-time Oscar winner.
That's amazing.
You know what I mean? And we on the stage with these people. We did the Larry King show with them first.
Wow.
With the book, because it was basically dealing with wrongful convictions, because the movie was about a girl not finishing school, going back to school, getting a law degree, and getting her brother out of prison.
Right.
And Barry Sheck and a lot of those people that I know of, that I know personally, was in the film. And it made it just that much special that they have actually innocent people on the stage with them while they, promoting this movie.
Yeah.
Which was great.
Cool.
We never thought that it would happen, but it did. And once I got a taste of that, I was like, I want that feel again. And the same thing happened when True Conviction came out. Red carpet, we premiered at Tribeca, all kinds of media coverage and things of that nature. I got used to it. But why I enjoyed it so much, because True Conviction shows you about how hard it is to get your life back once you was falsely in prison.
Sure.
And how easy it is to get wrongfully convicted. So I wanted that to keep being on people's minds, and people could go and see it anytime they wanted to. That's what just led to the Dallas Project, which we, through filming, now we're editing right now. It's a 6-part documentary series that PBS has bought. And the first series is about me. The first series is about me, and that's the one we're submitting to Sundance Film Festival. So hopefully Sundance agreed to let us premiere there. So that's what we're working on right now.
And that's called the
Dallas Project. And everything is based out of Dallas. You have, like I say, back then when I went to court, 85% of the court building was Caucasian, was white. Now it done flipped. Majority of the courtroom is African American people. It's a lot of us in there, like 65%.
Yeah.
And this Dallas Project documentary series, it covers that. You have
process.
Process. You have judges. You have John Wilder Price in it. You have the school superintendent in it. You have the sheriff, the constable, because all of these, and the DA is involved in it also. And majority of these people are African-American women, because now African-American women, you know, they the sheriff, you know, they the constable and things of that nature. So we just want to show people the history of Dallas and where it was and where it is right now.
Yeah. And that's what a great success story ultimately, despite the price that you had to pay to try to bring this to the forefront. And I admire you more than you know, and I'm honored to get a copy of the book. I bought a couple extra copies too. Like I said, that I'll give to a couple of key people, including Dr. Peterson over here. And I'll give you a copy of my book as well. And I hope I hope that gives you some insight into, you know, how some of the other folks think about this as they experience it, because it's really different. And it was a life-changing experience for me from a human perspective too. So, you know, anything that you ever need, I'm here for you, and I will absolutely, you know, promote, you know, whatever your plights are. If you need help in an investigation or whatever, I mean, whatever you need, I'm here for you. I'm honored to have you come spend time for sure.
Yeah, man, it's one thing before I leave, I would like to tell and encourage anybody and everybody. If you ever be summoned to be on a jury panel, don't run from it. Embrace it. Because just your one vote alone can stop an innocent man or woman from going to prison, or worse yet, going to death row.
Yeah.
So don't run from being on a jury panel. Embrace it and use your own mind when you do it. Don't let nobody, you know, coerce you into saying something that you don't actually believe, because that happens a lot in our jurors, you know, in our jury rooms. So just, you know, accept that and embrace it and be for what it's worth. Use your own brain and your own mind when you're making those decisions.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice, and such a simple thing too. That you know, it's part of our public responsibility, and it's that important. If this doesn't explain that,
right? What does?
Yeah, exactly. It was an honor to have you, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
I'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it.
Don't be sitting down yet. Too much to do, so many without a clue. Playing hard to get. Put your ears on with the ones who ain't gone. Do the voodoo that you do. Staging full school rather than picking the ones we can't build on. Sitting down yet. Many a fool can a kingdom rule, as long as they don't look back. Now. They're clean and cool, what you learned in school. It's hard work over fact. Freedom, gotta get freedom. Welcome to the sun. Who don't be sitting down yet.
Happily, do this for those before and after me. Trying to pass the baton forward like I'm athletes. Took mine and ran with it, now I'm thinking about the next generation. Give them a platform for progress. Butterfly effect, coming live and direct. Ain't no telling how our decisions will manifest. I ain't crying for help, I can do this on my own. Set my bread, build my wealth, then bring it back to my home. Still my spirit fluctuates like the Dow Jones. I go from Huey P to coppers of jewelry. Next from Martin Luther to riding around with my shooters. The balance of it all keeps my heart deeply rooted. Low.
Be sitting down yet. Too much to do, so many without a clue. Playing hard to get. Put your ears on with the ones who ain't gone. Staging full school rather than pick we can't hold on. Sitting down, yeah.
Don't be sitting down, don't be sitting down. Don't be sitting down, don't be sitting down. Don't be sitting down, don't be sitting down. Gotta go and get it, gotta move around. Don't be sitting down, don't be sitting down. Don't be sitting down, don't be sitting down. Don't be sitting